Hi, my name is Wesley Lawton. I'm a grief counselor with Hospice of Michigan in the Macomb County area and the facilitator of Men Overcoming Loss of Partner or Spouse, the grief support group. And the group has been taking place virtually up to this point for quite some time, and I'm happy to be able to share that we will have an in-person option available for those within driving distance of our Clinton Township office. That's located at 39531 Garfield Road, Clinton Township, and sometimes putting the address into a GPS doesn't quite get people there, so I'll let you know that it's about a quarter-mile north of 17 Mile Road. On the west side of the road, we have a sign, but it's kind of hard to see, so the easiest way to find it is to look for the Wyandotte Middle School sign. And we are just across from the school, the building with the yellow fire hydrant in front. Uh, our office is on the south side of the building facing 17 Mile, and if you come, you just need to ring the doorbell and somebody will let you in, and I hope you're able to make it. I'd appreciate it if you could register and let me know that you're coming so that I can prepare appropriately. Been having a little bit of trouble recently with my microphone and Zoom and something in the software or something, so hopefully you can hear me okay. What I've been told that you can hear me, but you may need to turn up the volume quite a bit, so just don't forget to turn it back down at the end of the video if I'm having an audio issue with this recording. Maybe you can hear me loud and clear, and that's great. So without further ado, I would like to give a little bit of a summary of some of the things we went over in the grief support group, the Men Overcoming Loss of Spouse or Partner group that took place on Tuesday, March 15th, a couple days ago as of this recording. And we had a nice full group. I think there were 12 guys in attendance in addition to myself and Ron Grease, our faithful volunteer who adds so much to our group. And so we talked a little bit about being in the group and sticking around for a long time and what kind of a role you play in the group and whether it's beneficial. So covered those issues as a little bit of housekeeping, but it's also good to reflect if you're in any kind of a support group, whether it's this one or a different one. How am I benefiting? What kind of a role am I playing? Am I more of a somebody at the beginning of my journey who's doing a lot of listening and learning and sharing when I need to? Am I somebody who's been on this journey for quite some time and might be benefiting a little bit, but mostly there to kind of mentor with others? Am I treating it as more of a social group? And in that case, might there be another way of fulfilling that kind of a social need? So we've got a great group of guys who are very warm and accepting and non-judgmental and brave, really, to be able to share some of their most difficult and deep feelings and thoughts about such a sensitive topic as the loss of a spouse. I believe it is a spouse for everybody in the group right now. So just so that I don't have to keep saying spouse or partner, partner or spouse, I'll continue to say spouse, but the group is really designed for anybody who's lost a loved one, having been in a committed relationship where you're partners for a long period of time. So some of the topics that were covered in this group included sharing the stories of loss. I always like when we have new people in our group, and we did have, I think, maybe 2 new people and a couple more who it was their second time in the group. And so they got a chance at some level or another to share what they have been going through and what their spouse died of, what disease or what circumstances, what they've been through and what they're facing today or today as of the group. And this is really one of the most important aspects of joining a grief support group, is to be able to share this story with other people who have been through something at least somewhat similar and are there to listen and to share as well. And so I encourage you to share your story and to share it often. If you feel like you're repeating yourself, even to the same people sometimes, understand that that's the normal way that we as humans process something like this. You've got to revisit it over and over again. And so hopefully you have somebody in your life or a support group in your life who are willing to listen to these things as you process it, as you sort of get it out. Otherwise, or perhaps in addition to this, journaling, of course, as I've talked about many times, and as we talk about in our group, any kind of writing can be very helpful as well. 1 second here, I need to pause the recording. All right, we're back. Hopefully that pausing and resuming worked just fine. So, as I was saying, share your story. It helps. It's something that you need to do. It's a lot to wrap your mind around. And as you put it into words, whether verbally or in writing, or in some other kind of an expressive or creative way, then you start to get more peace with it. It becomes less overwhelming and vague, and less of a difficult feeling and more of something that can sort of exist in your brain as a memory or an idea, something that's easier to cope with. Another topic that came up was about asking for help and about how it's really ideal if you have people in your life, friends, family, neighbors, who ask you, what do you need? And invite you to tell them, invite you to ask for things. When you first lose, it's hard to ask somebody for help, or to admit that you need help, even in ideal circumstances. But when you lose a loved one, you are less motivated in general than usual. You have less energy to reach out to somebody. You're feeling more down and depressed and alone. Like you get the feeling, unfortunately, oftentimes that other people don't want to be around you, that you're just going to bring them down, or that you're not worth being around, or negative thoughts like that are pretty common after a loss, especially one so significant as a spouse. And so it's hard to tell somebody what you need, to ask, hey, would you mind cooking me something sometime this week, or just helping me pick up or organize a little bit, or just kind of come and be with me, so that I'm not alone today, even just for a couple hours. If you can imagine picking up the phone or sending a message and asking somebody for that, it might seem pretty daunting or like something you'd just rather not do. So it is ideal if you have people asking you, what do you need? Please tell me, I want to help. I don't know what you need. Or maybe they do know what you need. Maybe they're that informed or intuitive to say, I'm going to swing by later and bring you a meal, or why don't we get some coffee? You might be feeling kind of alone, and I would love to spend some time with you, or catch up, or just listen. But most of us don't have people in our lives who know to do those things. And so the unfortunate reality is that most people do have at least one or two people, if not many more, in their life who do want to help, but they don't know how. They don't know whether you want help. They're uncomfortable with the unknown of your feelings and your experience. Grief can go so many different ways, as many of us know. And so they might be afraid that they would offend you by offering help, or they might be afraid of triggering your grief. They might think you're just trying to stay busy and keep your head down and keep moving forward, and that by offering help or offering to be a listening ear, that they would trigger your grief in a way that you would not want. Most people, unless you've been through what you may be going through right now, the loss of a spouse or a partner, they don't know that it's always better to err on the side of offering for help, and that grieving people almost always would like to talk about their loved one or about what they're going through if they have somebody who is there to truly listen and not try to fix them, not try to say, oh, let's talk about me for a little while. These are things that grieving people pretty much always want, as you know very well. And so the onus may fall on you to say, can I just process a little bit with you? Would you mind, could we set up a time for you to come over this weekend? I could really use some help with this or that, and I'm not used to doing it on my own, or I'm going through a lot right now and I could use some extra help. And like any skill, the more you do it, the better you get. but it's very normal for that to be difficult, especially the first handful of times that you do it. But it's a big benefit for you and also for the people in your life who do want to help. Again, it's so common to have people who really sincerely want to be there for you. They just don't know how to go about it. And so if you can do them a favor, unfortunate as it is that you need to, and let them know how they can help, that can make them feel really good and appreciate that you took that first step. And again, it of course ends up benefiting you as well. It's a win-win, even though it can be hard to do. Another topic that came up is coping with an empty house. And all that I will say about that is that that is very normal. I would say, in my observation, that's the biggest challenge for people who lose a spouse, or really anybody who they live with all the time, but especially a spouse or a partner. Coping with that empty house is very difficult. And I know that some strategies that have been helpful for people, at least for a temporary measure, would be to leave on the TV or the radio or some music. That can do something in your brain to make you feel a little bit less alone, even though you know that there's not another person in the house with you. To consider getting a pet. That can help you feel less alone, although of course that comes with its own share of responsibilities, and so that's not for everybody, but for some people that can be a huge help to feel less alone. If you have a child, an adult child perhaps, or somebody else who it just works out circumstantially for them to stay with you for a while, that's another thing to consider. Another thing would be to just sort of change your routine when you're ready, to especially as it's getting warmer right now, you can see the sunshine reflecting off my face. To get outside a little bit more, maybe to go for walks or to participate in community centers of some kind, be it a church or a group for people around your age, or a grief support group certainly, maybe athletics. All these kinds of things can help you deal with the empty house a little bit more. And again, like so many other things, as time goes by and as you're exposed to it more, it becomes less overwhelming, easier to manage and cope with that. Speaking of adapting to this change, I did give a little bit of a talk about adapting to change in general. It's something that I had mentioned in the previous group, and one of the group members asked me to expound upon it a little bit, and so that's what I did, and I'll just share the few thoughts that I had with you as well about adapting to change. That, you know, there's the old saying that the only constant in life is change, and we know that to be true. Everything comes and goes, and so the change is always happening. And all change, even if it's something that we have been looking forward to or that we celebrate, all change involves loss. Change in your situation, of course, death being one of the most, if not the most, jarring and stark kinds of changes and losses that we go through. And so it takes the most adapting. And the first thing that I shared about this is that we as humans do not do well with change. I shared that I like to think of myself as somebody who deals with change better than the average person, and maybe you do as well, but it's really a fact that we don't do well with the change in our environment. It causes stress, and it takes energy to adapt to change, even small ones. I shared about how we're simply not evolved to deal with change well. Our ancient ancestors lived in the same kind of environment 24/7. They rarely traveled far outside the village. And so they had the same neighbors, the same family, the same types of home, the same types of climate, the same types of challenges and conveniences throughout their whole lives. Almost, that's true for almost all of our ancestors who we evolved from. And so that's really what we are designed to live with. And so now in the modern world, we're constantly dealing with a change in environment, with the invention of cars and certainly televisions, computers, and cell phones, and of course airplanes, and all kinds of ways that we're going from one kind of an environment to another one in the blink of an eye, and we're bombarded by these sorts of changes over and over again within our minds. And so I shared that's probably one contributor to mental health problems that we face in our society at an increasing rate. One aspect among many. So that relates to your loss in that it's very normal for it to be difficult to cope with the change, not something that you can just sort of get over, certainly not overnight, and even something so drastic as the loss of a spouse throughout your life, you can expect to always be adjusting to that, even though it gets easier as time goes on. When you lose a loved one, again, especially a spouse, somebody that you live with, everything is different. Your life is upside down. It's not something that you gave permission for it to happen. There are 1,000 little reminders throughout the day, and I probably don't need to tell you this because you're going through it, but it can help to name this. There are 1,000 little reminders throughout the day that your loved one is gone, and your mind continually goes through, especially early on, a process of just sort of being used to your old normal and then coming face to face with a huge change in your normal over and over and over again. It's exhausting, it's stressful, it's depressing. So just want to really normalize that um, everything is different, and this loss cannot be overstated. It should not be minimized by you or the people around you. Um, it's just, it changes everything. It's like being teleported to a different planet or a different reality. So it takes a lot of time and work to adapt to it and to establish some kind of a new normal. As I mentioned, your brain is working overtime to adapt to these changes. That's one of the biggest reasons why it's common after the death of a loved one to have a decreased focus, decreased energy levels, um, and related issues. Maybe you forget things more often. Maybe you take a wrong turn on a route that you've driven 100 times before. It's because your brain is just going in circles trying to figure out what the heck is going on. uh, what what's wrong here? Why is this so different? How do I cope with the same thing that I've been used to for so long with this enormous change that's taken place? uh, so these symptoms are very normal, and as you do adapt, as you do express your grief and receive support over time, these kinds of symptoms will abate, and you'll probably, it's safe to assume, have some more energy and some more focus as time goes on, and you find some semblance of normal. This is a long process, as I alluded to, and you know this, but you probably need to remind yourself multiple times throughout each day that this is going to take a while, and you've got to play the long game, so to speak. There's no use in it's normal to do so, but it's not helpful to get frustrated at yourself or at God or at your loved one that it's taking such a long time and that you just want things to be normal and okay again. Again, very normal, very common and natural emotion and thoughts to experience. But if you can practice it, if you can help it, don't dwell there, and understand that it's normal for me to be feeling this frustration and this feeling of lostness and being overwhelmed, and it will get better over time as I'm working on my grief. Um, our volunteer Ron Grease has his own model of the grief process, which I find to be just as good as any that I've heard. And for him, the first and most important step is to believe that you can heal. And that's what I'm talking about, is to and he puts on the word eventually. That's an important word. One of our group members shared that he had a friend who said that, I think it was with her experience, she shared the first 3 years are hell, and that it's a little better than the year after that, and a little better the year after that. And it may not be 3 years of hell for everybody. It might be a number of months. It might be 1 year or 2 years. That it just feels like it's a huge challenge, a slog to just get through the day. You'll probably have some good days within that time period, but you know what? For some people it is 3 years. For some people it's even longer that you feel stuck in that place. And so that word eventually is vital to keep you going. And it can be helpful to have that in mind, that oh, it's been 3 months and this is still so tough. Well, guess what? That's unfortunately normal. That just speaks to how hard this is and how much you love your spouse who passed away. Um, that attachment has been so strong. And not that that attachment goes away, but that, again, you adapt to life without them with you all the time. So this is a long process. You're playing the long game, and just got to keep waiting and keep going every day. Stay engaged with your life. Find some new things. Hold on to some old things. Um, so those are the main topics that we went over in this last group. This has been, I feel, a little bit of a longer video, although I think I say that more often than not. So thanks for watching. Feel free to share, to rewatch, whatever you'd like to do with this video. And invite you to join us if you haven't done so or if you haven't considered doing so. We meet the third Tuesday of each month from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And so our next group, I just want to confirm, not give the wrong info, is April the 19th. Again, that's a Tuesday night. And you can contact me at 586-263-8514 or at wlawton, that's WLAWTON as in Nancy, at HOM as in Michigan.org and register for the group and be happy to have you. Thank you.